I hope so. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Jama. I am the Programs and the Community Coordinator here at Onsite Gallery, so we welcome you to our space today. With that said, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement. Onsite Gallery acknowledges the ancestral territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which we work, stand, create, and live in. Onsite Gallery is the flagship professional gallery of OCAD University and an experimental curatorial platform for art, design, and new media. Onsite Gallery would like to acknowledge the support of Canada Council for the Arts for the Digital Now grant and our production partnership with OCAD ULive. Onsite Gallery and the Inuit Art Foundation also acknowledges the support of the City of Toronto Indigenous Art and Culture Partnership Fund for Upfront Inuit Public Art at Onsite Gallery. We would also like to acknowledge and thank the support of the Toronto Friends of the Visual Art. Now I will hand this over to Ryan Rice.
Thank you, Susan. My name is Ryan Rice. I'm the Executive Director and Curator Indigenous Art here at Onsite Gallery, and I would like to thank you and welcome you here today. Thank you for coming out for this event that we've been planning for quite a long time and finally got Kyle to come and join us from Edmonton. So our event today is a result of our partnership with the Inuit Art Foundation, and together we present Upfront Inuit Public Art at Onsite Gallery, which is a series of commissioned digital murals by Inuit artists. Our inaugural mural featured the work of Kabluziak and was installed in April 2022, and our current mural, Northern Flash, by Kyle Aleekuk, who is our guest today, and you'll hear speak about it, is on view until the end of March. On April 1st, we install a new mural by Robert Kotuk, and it'll be up through April to August. So the impetus of this public art project is to recognize the important contemporary contributions of the Inuit art sector. And Onsite is pleased to work with the Inuit Art Foundation to support Inuit art and artists in the public realm. The Inuit Art Foundation is the only national organization supporting Inuit artists working in all medias and geographic areas. The foundation empowers and supports Inuit artists' self-expression and self-determination through its many platforms, including the Inuit Art Quarterly, Canada's largest art magazine, the IAQ Profiles, Artist Services Awards, scholarships, and mentorship opportunities. So now I welcome Alyssa Presida, Executive Director of the Inuit Art Foundation, to say a few words and to introduce Kyle and our program today. Alyssa?
Thanks so much, Ryan, and thanks everyone for being here, and for those of you who are online, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks, Kyle, for coming. It's so great to have you here. Just to let you know a little bit about the Inuit Art Foundation and the work we do to give some context to the talk. As Ryan said, we are the only national arts organization working in support of Inuit artists in any discipline, anywhere in Canada and increasingly beyond throughout Inuit Nunat. And so we are best known for the Inuit Art Quarterly. This is an issue you can find on our website that has Kyle's writing and work in it. So check out Bridging Time on our website, as well as a lot of other programs, including the Kayungik Sout grants, which close on March 19th, that Kyle is also responsible for, because after we commissioned this mural, we hired him as a program officer. So it's really lovely to have you here. And any Inuit artists watching, please, please, please apply for that funding. We would love to help you pursue projects, sort of like this. So it is my great pleasure as the executive director and also just a big fan of your work to introduce Kyle Aleekuk Nakutsiak, who is a multidisciplinary artist who works in graphic art, digital art, music, I just found out a bit, and whose work was most recently exhibited outside of here at an exhibition called Tether at the Yukon Arts Center as part of the Arctic Art Summit. We first got to know Kyle through the Inuit Art Quarterly, and he's an exceptional writer as well as a fantastic artist. And so, welcome, Kyle. I'm like, rather than me talking about you, do you want to say a couple words about your practice?
Sure. I just want to say thank you all for attending. Thank you, Alyssa, and thank you, Ryan, everyone at Onsite. Yeah, it's really great to be here in Toronto. Like you said, yeah, I work in many different media, and I'm kind of just at a loss for words at being here. It's the first time I've really spoken in public about my art. I've done some online stuff, some live stream, talks just about my artwork, but yeah, I'm just kind of like super honored to be here.
Well, we're so honored to have you. Ryan, I think you have a couple questions about the mural.
Yeah, I just want to say that we are streaming this live, so we're on YouTube and Facebook, and we might be fielding some questions later for you from that audience out there. But it was exciting when we put this project together that we came up with a long list of artists, and we narrowed it down, and Kyle's work stood out for us because we were really drawn to his flash tattoos that he's done in the past. So we reached out to him and invited him to think about designing this mural that's outside that would speak to many ideas that he's working through, also have a deep connection to your own background, your history, Inuit art, shifting the understanding or perception of what Inuit art is. And we were really excited to invite him and start talking through this process with him. And scale was one thing that I think surprised Kyle was, I don't think he's ever worked with thinking about a mural and these flash tattoo designs within the scale of 12 feet by 9 feet. So my first question is, before we get into any details about your work in practice, can you let us know what your reaction was when you first walked upon it, either last night or today, and seen it for the first time in person?
Yeah, so actually my wife and I walked past it this morning on our walks around downtown Toronto. It's my first time being here. And we, after breakfast, came and walked down to Onsite Gallery and checked out the mural for the first time, and I was kind of blown away. Like, my wife got a picture of me just staring at the artwork, and I've never seen my work on that scale before, like you mentioned. I'm kind of used to like tunnel vision, doing small kind of tattoo flash artwork, either on watercolor paper or on my iPad. And yeah, trying to like conceptualize this mural in my head was really difficult for me. But yeah, it turned out great. I was like absolutely blown away. And I just want to say that, like the precision in installing it's on vinyl, right? I can appreciate that. I used to work for a sign installation company, and yeah, just seeing that, I'm like, wow, they did a really good job. But yeah, like very honored to see my artwork on that scale, and yeah, speechless.
Yeah, it's amazing to be able to bring the gallery outside of our space so people get to see something that we're sharing 24/7. So I get here 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. I see people walking their dogs and looking at the artwork. You see people just walking straight by it. So there's a lot of different, interaction that's going on with it. And when we put it up, we wanted to, he titled it Northern Flash. So can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to do this work?
So the idea behind Northern Flash is kind of merging my two favorite art styles together. Tattoo art flash has always been, something I've really been drawn to, specifically traditional American tattoo flash work. I just love the simplicity behind it, just bold black lines and really bright colors and very, very minimalist in a sense, and like cool gradients. And I saw a relationship between that and my my own family's art style in Uluhaktok in the Holman Eskimo Co-op. My grandfather and his sister were printmakers, and I have their artwork on my walls, and very much similar, like a hard black outline, like solid, beautiful, bright colors, very simple gradients. The use of negative space as a part of the whole entire composition of the artwork, I felt was very special. And seeing the relationship between like trad American tattoos and northern printmakers, like I just thought, like that is a beautiful kind of relationship going on between there. And there's even a further history beyond that with Japanese printmaking and how it was introduced into the North. And like I mentioned, my grandfather and his sister, Peter Aliknak Banksland, and his sister Agnes Nanogak Goose, they worked very much inspired by the techniques of Japanese printmaking, and that also, trad American tattoos are very much inspired by Japanese tattoo art, which is also inspired by Japanese woodblock prints. So there's this kind of like very cool relationship going on between all of them.
Yeah, and that relationship is ink. So printmaking is all based on ink, and tattooing is ink. So there's a very strong relationship to what you're pulling through historically, as well as within the contemporary sense. And I think what we really were struck with this mural was the accessibility of it for people to respond to it, because many people understand the tattoo flash, going into a tattoo place and seeing these images, the Americana styles, and because they're iconic, right? They're iconic within this history of tattooing as well as design. There's one image that struck a question immediately, was this image. And when I reached out to Kyle, I said, can you give us a little bit of background of what this image represents? And he wrote back to me and said, it's based on a very famous tattoo called the Rock of Ages. So immediately we look through Google and we find Rock of Ages, and we're like, oh, this is like everywhere in the world, right? It's such a global image. So can you talk a little bit more about this design, how you turned it into a design for yourself, and how that image actually influences your work for this mural?
Yeah, so little history on tattoos and Rock of Ages, and how a lot of classic American tattoos are based on almost like a biblical sense. They have a lot of biblical references, and Rock of Ages is a very, very popular one. A lot of people get it as a giant back piece tattoo, and it depicts a woman kind of dangling from a cross in the middle of what looks like an ocean with crashing waves. And from my understanding of it, and a lot of tattooers' understanding of it, I'm not a tattooer, I've done tattoos, but I've always been obsessed with the culture around tattoos. And from my understanding, the Rock of Ages is based off of like the idea of being able to kind of cling to religion in very turbulent times, and having religion as a solid structure in your life. And I like to kind of take these images and flip them on their head, and throw a bit of an Enoch twist on them. So swapping out the stone cross and using an Inukshuk, it was very fitting to me to think of being able to fall on your ancestors and your cultural heritage and your ancestry, much in the same way that people rely on religion in turbulent times. So that's basically the idea of it. And it's just, I would get that tattoo. That looks sweet. Why not?
On your back, the full size.
Yeah, there you go.
Alyssa?
I mean, I think you should get that tattoo, but, you know, that's up to you. I wanted to also ask, because you were talking about printmaking and the Japanese influence both of tattoos and of Inuit printmaking traditions, the background that you chose for all of these images, it sort of evokes like a rice paper or even like a yellowed sort of flash sheet in a tattoo shop. Were you channeling both of those things when you thought about that? Because it's really striking from the street that it is this, it's not like a stark white that everything is on.
Yeah. Yeah, both the printmaking that I've described from like my relatives and many other famous printmakers of the North. There's also that commonality between the background being used as part of the entire composition and like really being able to see the texture of the paper. And in flash art, it's very common, not so much rice paper, but watercolor paper that's stained with coffee. And yeah, it kind of gives this like skin-toned hue to it almost, and skin is very textured, so you want to give people an idea of what it would look like on skin. So yeah, it's just a very like common thing. And this was done digitally, so downloading like paper textures online to try to give it that effect. But it's surprising how many people it fools. They think it's like, you know, it's actually on a piece of paper and it's painted, but it's amazing the things you can do with digital artwork these days.
Yeah, and you've done quite a lot of digital work between, you recently had a piece in Tether, which came out of an incubator that took place, I think, in Montreal, where you were working with animation and projections. I know you did, was it the emojis for the Inuvialuk Communication Society, which were amazing. What do you like to work, how does it, I guess, what do you like about working in digital media, and how is it different or complementary also to your sort of graphic practice?
Digital media is very, it's interesting because I taught myself how to do drawing digitally, but I just like how fun and kind of like, you know, wide open it is, and it's very accessible, and you kind of have access to all these like, you know, textures and a wide array of colors and different brushes, so you can really kind of go anywhere with it, and you can really adapt your own style to digital artwork. And it kind of like even doing animation, it's, you know, just learning how to do digital art, you kind of bridges you to animation, which was part of that Montreal incubator. And that piece was, again, my first time doing animation, and just using a very simple program that, you know, pretty much anybody can download. If you have an iPad and an Apple Pencil, you could learn how to do digital art. So yeah, it's really accessible, it's really intuitive, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Ryan?
Yeah, the one thing that I like about this is that it really speaks to what we promote at OCAD is art and design, so it combines both. It's both practices in one. And the digital really lent to the development of this piece, because we were able to go back with Kyle several times. He shared some images. We wrote back and said, maybe you want to do a compilation, a flash sheet. So he started putting together different designs, and I was just telling him earlier that I actually looked at the 3 sort of sketches that he proposed, that where we got to this final piece. But all of these were conceived as individual works before you brought them together for this mural, right? Can you talk a little bit about each one? Maybe start with the skidoo?
Yeah, like you said, these were all designed individually at various different times, and creating this flash sheet was a really great idea to kind of compile all my favorite works together in one flash sheet. And I had a really fun time trying to come up with the overall composition of all of them and how they would all fit together, much like when you get like a patchwork of tattoos on a sleeve, the tattooer really thinks about the existing negative space on your arm and what could fit there, and spacing things accordingly so it doesn't look all muddy and, you know, mashed up together. But specifically this skidooer was, yeah, like I said, one of my favorite pieces, just thinking about, you know, people cruising around up north on this, you know, yeah, these little skidoos and Hondas, and it's kind of a symbol of like the transformation of transportation in the north, and it again it's a way to get out on the land and you know, engage with hunting and fishing, and those also speak to a lot of the subject matter that I like to draw. I get a lot of inspiration from being out on the land and being out hunting and fishing. And I didn't grow up in the north. I grew up in, you know, just outside of Edmonton, Alberta, and you know, like hunting and fishing is such a way of life in Alberta. Guaranteed you could go to like 9 out of 10 doors on a block and ask if somebody hunts or fishes, and yeah, like I said, 9 times out of 10 there's going to be somebody who hunts or fishes in one of those households or knows one. Like and I feel like it's a very common thing up north too. It's you either hunt or fish, or you're married to somebody who hunts and fishes. But yeah, the skidoo kind of being like a staple to engaging in that, and having to go out on the land and yeah, engage with fish and animals.
The interesting thing too is we tried to get Kyle out in November or December, and he says, "I'm hunting or fishing."
Yeah. Well, and I think it also really communicates kind of like a, I mean, the person looks pretty badass, but also like a real freedom, and like, which I think is sort of also what you're describing around those sort of traditional practices, right?
Yeah, she does look like a bit of a badass. She's got like the cut-off jean jacket, like biker vibes, and to me that's like how I envision people in the north. They're just badass. Like they just go for it. Just hop on your Honda and like, I got to go get some food. Like that's grocery shopping in the north.
Can you talk about the caribou?
I was like, speaking of groceries.
Yeah, speaking of groceries, yeah, the caribou, this is one of my all-time favorite pieces. It's, again, this is based off of a very popular traditional American tattoo, taken from, like, yeah, a biblical, it's called Pharaoh's horses, and it's 3 horses that are kind of galloping, and they all have different head positions, so it kind of gives this sense of movement, but it's meant to represent, each horse is supposed to represent strength, fear, and power. And swapping the horses out with caribou, it's like the caribou is such an iconic species of the north, and it's very much tied to Inuit culture and Inuit way of life. And I love thinking about caribou. I've never got to like interact with them, but I love thinking about caribou. I love learning about them, but like I said, strength, fear, and power, it kind of represents like just the north in general. You know, caribou brings strength to the people of the north, but it also, like, caribou being such a, I don't know if they're an indicator species, but, you know, that relationship with the climate and just accessibility to caribou, it kind of frightens a lot of people of the north. You know, the fear of caribou just not being there year after year and having reliable sustenance from caribou. Like I can sense that about people who rely on it so much in the north. And power. I mean, like it's such a powerful creature that gives a lot of, like, it just gives sustenance to people of the north, and that's a very powerful thing, being able to access your own food and going out and hunting it, interacting with it, and having that kind of spiritual connection with these animals.
I mean, that's beautiful, and I also am learning so much about tattoo culture that I had no idea. One of the things that really strikes me when we're talking right now is, and I don't mean to keep coming back to this, but you're talking about kind of shared Japanese influences of tattooing and also of Inuit printmaking. And one of the things that I think of often when I think of the community where your family's from in Uluhaktok is that when printmaking started in that community, the first collection of prints, I don't know how many people know this, had to be adjudicated by something called the Canadian Eskimo Arts Council to be approved for distribution, and the entire first set of prints was disallowed because they had backgrounds, and they weren't Inuit enough. And so I think about the way that your work is sort of pushing boundaries of what people might think of Inuit art as being, and that's part of why we were so excited to put it on the street. And also how tattooing has sort of been taboo, and how there have been so many barriers that people have had to overcome as Inuit artists. And I wonder if you think about that in your work, or if you think about your relationship to that sort of trajectory of moving the needle forward, or if you don't think about it, which is also super awesome.
Yeah, to be honest, it's not at the forefront of my mind when I create these pieces, but I can appreciate it, especially, like you said, tattooing has always been kind of like a taboo, like a fringe, outcast kind of culture, and to be honest, it really isn't at the forefront of my mind, but
which is progress, though. Right? Like that's not something that you have to consider in your practice, which I think is really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes kind of natural. Like I said, just trying to like marry these two worlds together that I feel like have so much, there's already a relationship there. And if I'm pushing boundaries, then so be it.
I mean, that's pretty great. As a way forward. And I think also that carries through in digital practice too. Are there things that you want to try in your art making practice that you haven't yet?
Yeah, I want to try a lot of things. I don't know, I've always considered myself to be a very creative person, even outside of art. I like thinking about things, kind of against the grain. But I would love to try, like photography is one thing I've always wanted to try, but photography equipment is very expensive, so that's where you apply for grants. And I mean, tattooing is another thing that I've always wanted to pursue, just haven't really dived into it and found the time to do so. I've done a couple tattoos. I was very honored to even tattoo one of my favorite tattooers in Edmonton. They were very encouraging of me to learn how to tattoo because they love my work, and they've always encouraged me to keep pursuing it. But really, that's what I would love to do is do more tattoos and do some photography. I've always been interested in like wildlife photography, so that's another thing I would love to do. But just keep creating in general. That's what I would love to be able to continue to do.
That's amazing. Ryan?
Yeah, what I love in what you do is you collapse the hierarchies of art. So like how tattooing has really reached a different level in illustration, design, digital. It's become a medium unto itself that can't be looked down upon anymore, right? You talked about it a little bit earlier. I did get a text from Inuit Art Foundation board member, Linda Grusani, and she wants to know, Do you have tattoos?
Oh yes. They're kind of covered up all the time, but I do. I've got tattoos all up my arms. I've got the job stopper tattoos on both my hands, but it's proven not to be true.
Yeah, it was like,
But that's what they've kind of, tattooing's always been kind of like viewed as this like, oh, he must be a bad person. He's got tattoos, or, and hand tattoos have always been like that's kind of the joke in the tattoo community, is they're called job stoppers, because you go in for a job interview and they see you have hand tattoos and they're not going to like you automatically, but
I guess it was good you interviewed with us virtually. No, I'm just
virtually,
kidding.
yes. Fully covered, hands below the webcam.
Yeah, and one of our goals with this is to shift the understanding of Inuit art, to move it beyond what the expectations have been for so long, given that it's such an important sector in the field of Canada art. Maybe you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of what the sort of resistance to early printmaking in Ulu was as well. But I think many people love, and understandably love, sculptural work and graphic work coming out of the north. And it has been hugely important to Inuit communities, but also the sort of, whatever we think of as the Canadian national artistic identity, like the Enchanted Owl by Inuvialuk is iconic and amazing, but iconic. And I think there is...
And would look amazing as a tattoo.
True. But our board president, Dr. Heather Gloliordi, wrote an essay years ago called sort of the Inuit of our imagination, about the way that people in the public think of Inuit art as being kind of crystallized in often like the 1960s to maybe the early 1980s, mostly big bear sculptures, which who doesn't love a big bear? Like, they're so great, but there's so much more. Like, there's so much more than that. There's digital art, there's film, there's tattooing, there's conceptual installation, there's all kinds of work, music, everything, right? Inuit make all kinds of work. And we see it all the time at the Inuit Art Foundation, right? That there still is this kind of too narrow view of what Inuit art can and should be, but that it actually is everything. And so, yeah, when we were thinking about this partnership with Onsite, which has been so spectacular so far, one of the things that we really tried to prioritize was making sure that work that was in the public tried to gently but firmly push back against these ideas. And particularly because Inuit artists, through a variety of reasons, including sort of geographic remoteness from major cities and all sort of other systemic barriers that, like, we talk about all the time at work, are often not in contention for public art opportunities. And so, we're so appreciative of Ryan for putting this forward so that there were opportunities that were Inuit specific for those conversations to happen in public spaces. I'd love to know how you feel about that, or like what your advice would be to other artists who are thinking about pursuing big ideas or opportunities like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about, that there's like such a narrow view of what Inuit art and what Inuit artists are supposed to create, and like I think we're at a point in time where we can just blow that up and just completely disregard it. Like if you paint, I don't know, if you could paint whatever, but if you're Inuit, it's still Inuit art. Like you could paint cityscapes, or you could paint whatever you want, but as long as, yeah, if you're an Inuit artist, doesn't mean you have to paint like polar bears and Inukshuks and Ulus, and I mean, I do just because I like the way they look, but yeah, just being an Inuit artist and you just creating whatever you want, that's huge. You're still an Inuit artist, and like history has shown with Inuit culture in general, adaptation and just surviving in the now and using what's around you and being inspired by what's around you, that's Inuit art. So yeah, it's never going to stop changing. It's never going to stop growing. People are going to do different things, like we see it all the time in the foundation. Just people exploring so many like amazing disciplines in art, and I think it's a very beautiful thing. But I would definitely encourage any Inuit artist out there to just do what you love, just create what you love, and apply for grants like the Kayangak grants. Deadline March 19th. But there's resources out there and funding out there that you can apply for. I've done it, and it's taken me here. It's and that's the beautiful thing about art, is kind of you just never know where it's going to take you in life, and you just got to throw yourself out there and just go for it. Just think big, go for it.
Yeah, I love that, and finally witnessing this in person this morning, does it push you to think bigger? Like, as Alyssa asked you, like, was it a challenge to think about this in terms of its scale, and now it makes sense in order to work through your designs, I guess?
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge, like I touched on at the beginning of this talk, just like conceptualizing my work that big, but like the possibilities are kind of endless. And we talked briefly about, I've done some projection work, and just seeing my artwork on a projection, it really gets your brain thinking, like, what else could I do with this? How big could I take this? What could I project on? But yeah, it's like, as an artist, you're kind of always thinking like that, like, what's the next thing? It could be, a 12 by 9 mural outside of a building in downtown Toronto. Like, this kid from the sticks out in Edmonton, Alberta is, has got a mural up in Toronto, or, projecting animations. Just the possibilities are really endless. So I'm always thinking about like the next big thing. But yeah, as an artist, creativity is not like a light switch, I like to say all the time, and you can't just turn it on and off, and you can't just be making all the time, but there's something always in the back of your head that's like percolating. It's just thinking about like, I wonder what I could do now.
Well, thanks for that. I think this is a good segue to open it up to any questions in the audience that you have of Kyle, his work, the mural. Any burning questions you want to know more information on? Is there anybody out there that has a question? In the back?
I'll be a runner. Hold on.
The image on the left of the Rock of Ages. Could you talk a little bit about that?
The knife?
The dagger.
Oh, the knife?
That one.
Yeah, so I don't know, knives and daggers and an eagle has always been like a staple of traditional American tattoos. It's like knives are one of the oldest tools used for everything. It's such a utilitarian thing that like I was telling my wife earlier, it's like everyone I know carries a pocket knife. It's just you never know when you need one, and they're just so handy. But not only do they look cool, but like they're a very useful thing. And then throwing a little ulu on there.
Does everybody see the ulu?
Yeah, the eagle kind of carrying the ulu. But yeah, like ulus and knives in the north are like, they're just tools for everyday use. Processing animals, very utilitarian, and they're pieces of art in themselves. Like the creation of an ulu, I've always been fascinated with. I've made a couple ulus in the past, and they're so fun to just to make. And I've always had an appreciation for people who make knives and forge knives, because it's an artwork all in itself, and to capture that in an image, or in this case like a tattoo style image, like yeah, again, I would get that tattooed.
Is that one of the outcomes of this project? You're going to have a new sleeve or something?
Yeah, there's a bit of room on, the arms there.
Any other questions?
1 second.
Kiza has the mic there.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you. Actually, I think my question is a bit of follow-up to what you just said. I'm curious if all the research that you've been doing on flash art and tattoos has influenced your own personal ink in any way, or the way that you think about tattoos on your own body?
Absolutely. Yeah, the research I've done on tattoos, there's very common images that are tattooed and done in various different styles from tattooers, and it's really just a matter of finding a tattooer that you really like their style and just wanting to get tattooed by them. Like, most of my tattoos are from a good friend that I went to high school with, and I just always loved his work. I always loved his approach to traditional American tattoos. But that being said, I've also got some tattoos that are a little more special to me than that. They were some of the first tattoos I got, and they're actually, it's artwork from my grandfather, and he was a printmaker, and seeing his prints, which one of them is hanging up on our wall, that's kind of where my brain started working. These would be awesome tattoos. They were never originally intended to be tattoos, but seeing them, the hard black outline, very minimalist color, a lot of black and white, the negative space being part of it all, I was like, damn it, I'm getting that tattooed. That is so cool. And then another, I've got 2 of his prints tattooed, one on each arm. But yeah, they're very special. One depicts a man and a woman. The man is holding a drum, and it kind of symbolizes the heartbeat between a couple. So, beautiful wife and I. And the other tattoo is 2 men fishing with spears, and they're fishing for char. And I just love their body poses, and I love the idea of fishing for char. It's absolutely delicious, and I love thinking about char. I love eating char. But yeah, drawing char. So these 3 char are on a stringer. So it's kind of like the catch of the day. And I have very fond memories of being in the north in Uluhaktok and fishing with my uncles. And it was just a beautiful day. I caught a bunch of fish, watched my auntie. She cut them up on a piece of cardboard, sitting in her kitchen, while we all watched of just her delicate work with an ulu. And it's just something so poetic about that. And then being able to share the fish and eat it together and talk about the day. Special things like that. I love when you can put that into a tattoo.
And I love the whole mural of it, because you could tell a story with this, as Kyle is doing, right? He's giving history, telling a story, and making it accessible to us, because we could probably all tell a story with one of these pieces as well, without even knowing Kyle. Any other questions? Miriam?
I'm going to be selfish and ask 2, if that's okay. I noticed that you use red, green, yellow in your color palette. Is there significance to those conceptually or design-wise?
Typically, for when I pick colors for doing any piece, I've always been inspired by artists who keep it very minimal, and I noticed that a lot of artists would pick 3 colors and just work within them and see how creative you can get with the coloring, just minimizing your palette and just trying to work with the 3 colors that you no, this is all I'm doing. Because I've done pieces that are very colorful and a wide array of colors, but there's something, I don't know, it kind of speaks back to that, the Inuit printmaking that my grandfather and his sister would do. Sometimes 1 or 2 colors, keeping it very simple, but again, with tattooing, your brain sees what it wants to see, so you can kind of like, you don't need a whole lot of color to understand what's going on in the picture. That's another thing I've always loved about trad tattoos.
And the second question is you have a very distinctive style with like fluid lines and your subject matter. How did you arrive at that style? Did it look different before? Do you think it will look different in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always changing. I mean, kind of like music, like you just like what you like. If it looks cool, I like it. But my style very much started with, particularly like in high school, I did a lot of like pencil, black and white realism, and that's all I was into. If you had asked me to do anything color, I was like, no, I hate color. And now it's like one of the most important pieces of like components of what I work with now. But as for like, you know, the line work, again, trying to keep it very simple and just being very loose. I remember one of my favorite tattooers who's done the majority of my work on my arms, he would always say, the looser the better. Like, you just kind of keep things loose. You don't think about it too hard, just draw it. And yeah, as I mentioned before, like the brain sees what it wants to see. Like, you could draw the most sloppy looking fish, but as long as it has some sort of like resemblance to a fish, that's your style. It's just, you know, that's just how it comes out. And the less lines, the better. And yeah, very simple.
And there was a question here.
Hi. I was just curious if, as a child, you were very creative. Did you like to draw? You mentioned you liked to draw in high school, so I was just curious if this was something even going back to your childhood.
Absolutely. My parents always encouraged my art ever since I was a young kid, like even before high school, before junior high. It was like something I would always just do. I would always just, you know, doodle. Mainly, you know, simple sketches and stuff like that. But yeah, all throughout school, doodling in notebooks and, but yeah, always, you know, had a bit of a creative background.
Kisa, can you let us know if there's any questions from our audience in YouTube or Facebook?
Yes, we have a YouTube question from To Say Yaksat magazine. They say, proud of you, Kyle, and greetings from your To Say Yaksat /ICS friends in Inuvik. How has your journey been in finding your own artistic and general voice?
Hi, Jason.
And I was like, hey, Jason.
But yeah, just like the overall journey of kind of where my art has taken me. It's something I could have never really imagined. I've always just drawn out of, you know, just the pure enjoyment of drawing. And, you know, at some points in my life, it had been used as like almost a form of healing, going through some difficult times. You just want to like take your mind off stuff. And like when my father passed away, that was really when I started getting back into artwork, and that was in my mid-20s. And yeah, I just always knew it was kind of something I could, you know, just take my mind off of things. And just drawing, just the simple joy of just being in a quiet place and drawing. And yeah, then I started like posting stuff on Instagram, and people would notice, and then it kind of got some traction, and it led me to working with Jason at Tusayakset, and that kind of like springboarded my whole kind of art career. If it wasn't for the Inuvialuk Communication Society, my artwork would have never been showed in their magazine, and then it just kind of snowballed. And yeah, very grateful for that relationship, and kind of where my art has taken me up until now.
Any other questions online? Any more questions from the audience? There's a question there.
Hi. So the pattern of 3 is pretty prevalent within your flash tattoos. There's 3 roses, 3 caribou, which you explained, 3 birds on the Rock of Ages, 3 fish, and you mentioned 3 colors. I was just wondering if that was, conscious, or if it just kind of all happened together.
Yeah, now that you point that out, that is very interesting. But, I mean, yeah, it could just totally be like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But I like that you point that out. That's actually very interesting. That's all I got.
Any closing words before we end this event? Alyssa?
Thank you so much, Kyle. This has been so amazing getting to talk to you about your practice. And thank you, Ryan, for hosting us and everybody at Onsite. I'd like to reiterate what Susan and Ryan said at the beginning and thank everybody who made this possible, the City of Toronto, our friends at the Toronto Friends of the Visual Arts, everybody at the IF and Onsite, and most importantly, Kyle. It's such a joy.
Thank you. Thank you both. It was such an honor to have this project go on. I want to thank everybody for coming out and attending online, and for everyone who helped to make this possible. Yeah, very much appreciated.
Yeah, and I want to thank Kyle for being a pleasure to work with. Communication, getting these designs created and ready for the mural. Your professionalism was very key in a timeline and deadlines that we were working towards, so really appreciate that. I want to thank everyone for coming out today, and also to let you know that we are sitting in an exhibition that's called More Than Human. We turned it off because it's all tech and all sound and all video, but we will be turning it back on. We're at midway through this exhibition, and it runs till May 11th. So please either stay around, come back and experience this very interactive virtual digital video, very sensory exhibition. And we look forward to hosting you in the future for other panels, and keep your eye out for our next mural that will be installed for April 1st. So thank you, everybody, and I want to thank the AV technicians, Sayed and Omar, for all their help, and OCADU Live for participating in producing this. So thank everybody, and thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, everybody.